Today. This meeting is being recorded. Okay, so my name is Michelle Harris, and I'm the board secretary for CPRS VI. I'm also the strategic planning and communications advisor in the City of Victoria's Communications and Engagement Department. Welcome to CPRS VI's virtual Lunch and Learn When to Turn Off the Conversation, presented by Sheldon Johnson, Director of Communications and Engagement at the City of Victoria. Sheldon is going to lead us through what led the city to turn off its social media comments in 2024 and how this action was received by the community and internal stakeholders. Welcome, Sheldon. Also with us today is Kathy Madusicki. She is the city's manager of visual communications. Thanks for being here with us, Kathy, and she can help us answer any questions as well. And joining us online to provide technical support is Ali Boyd, our president of CPRS VI. Thank you, Ali, for all of your help on this. And also joining us in the room is CPRS VI board members, Becky Hayton, who does communications, so you're always getting things from her, and Nicole Sendy, member at large. I would like to flag, like I did already, that this session is being recorded and it will be made available to CPRS VI members. Before we begin, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge that we are meeting virtually on the homelands of the Songhees Nation and the Kusapsan Nation. Please know we should have time for questions at the end. You can ask questions in the chat as we go, or put up your virtual hand at the end, and I'll moderate the Q&A. And now I'd like to formally introduce Sheldon. Sheldon Johnson first started working for the City of Victoria as the manager of engagement in March 2018 and returned to the city in October 2022 as the director of communications and engagement. Today, Sheldon leads 20 communications and public participation professionals and is responsible for overseeing impactful initiatives that give residents and businesses a voice in shaping their community while keeping them informed about the city's programs and services. Sheldon's professional background includes over a decade in communications at the provincial government, including his most recent role as the Director of Recovery Communications with Emergency Management BC, following the historic natural disasters that impacted British Columbia in 2021. Sheldon holds a bachelor's degree in communications and a master's degree in conflict analysis and management, both from Royal Roads University. Over to you, Sheldon.
Thanks very much, Michelle. Michelle's done such a wonderful job getting me ready and providing all kinds of notes, but she also knows that I'm really bad at following notes. And so I really do hope we have lots of time for questions and so that you can probe into anything that interests you. So let me set the stage here. As the City of Victoria, we have Facebook, Instagram, X, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. We have a digital communications strategist on our team who monitors those channels from 8 a.m. to 4:30 every day, but then after hours, management also monitors them. And then on weekends, we have someone who's on call just in case we have an emergency that we need to fire up those social networks. And then management will usually peek in on some of those throughout the weekend. The objectives of our social media platforms are to communicate the city's programs, services, initiatives, to also invite people to come to public engagement opportunities across the city or at City Hall, and to provide a two-way conversation for our community members and stakeholder groups. As you may have noticed, as you're all comms professionals, social media continues to just get worse. The conversations are becoming much more abusive and toxic. There's a lot of, and then at worst, it involves racism, hate speech, and things of the like. So as we continue to monitor those things, though, we had a significant event last year, Family Day. We put up a really nice family-friendly post about some of the exciting things that you could take part in that for free, family-friendly, fairly benign, obviously. But and then alongside of that, we put up a photo that we thought a nice stock image of an Indigenous family, and we try to be very inclusive here at the city. And so that we thought would be a very innocuous post, just sharing good information. But what that triggered, unfortunately, was a rather toxic and racist conversation on Facebook. Um, Please keep in mind that we're not going to show you the worst of it, but these are some of the examples if you can read it. How did we find out about this? Obviously, because we don't have someone actively monitoring over the weekend. We actually had a previous city councilor reached out through Facebook Messenger and pointed it out. Now, even though this is something we deal with constantly, we're always hiding or flagging or reminding people of our policies on social media. And from my time at the province, we were always encouraged to allow the conversation to moderate itself where it can. But unfortunately, as we found out, it just continued to get more and more toxic. To the point where, yeah, it got, you can see here, people commenting that we need white people in the photo or something, which is preposterous. So then you might ask, well, how many people actually see this kind of stuff? Is it really that widespread? Well, yes, we have a very, very active social media accounts, and our Facebook account is very active. So I'm not going to read the numbers out, but you can see that it had some reach. So that started a conversation internally. I often say here that we try to do things, make decisions not based on emotion, but based on data and thoughtful process. And so we took some time to start having a conversation amongst management, and then I reached out to some of my other director colleagues on the senior leadership team to see what their response would be if we just stopped allowing comments on these spaces. And I got a lot of actually support from that from my director colleagues, sort of questioning what the value statement, what the value proposition was for having these conversations online. And then we had a couple of sessions with our entire team to say like what is the advantages, disadvantages, those sorts of things. And at the end of the day, some of the most compelling arguments were, we don't allow this type of conversation in a council meeting. We don't allow it in our engagement sessions. So why do we facilitate this type of conversation? So that led to finally, yeah, making that decision. And so on August 2nd of last year, we updated our social media policy and we turned off comments on Facebook, Twitter, X, Instagram. We still, as part of that policy, said, if there is an emergency and we want to have a more active conversation on those channels, we will. But as for now, yeah, we turned them off. And so now our new social media policy, see it here, is that, yeah, they are valuable tools, our social media channels, but they have to maintain safe and productive and meaningful space. And here's a really important part too, is users can like and share city content within, and they can reach out through direct messenger and a variety of other ways like email, phone, all the other traditional ways, but we're just not going to provide a space for that conversation. So then the question is, did anybody really notice? Not really. It took a few months, and then we got one media request, and oddly from an outlet that I'd previously discussed that we might be doing this, and didn't seem to be too fussed about it either. And so we did end up, because of that, we did send a briefing note to council, and all I got was congratulations, essentially, from council members that did. There was no pushback at all from them. So we did respond to that media request, and there is I won't read out the entire statement here, but I will point out that in the third paragraph, I think is another really salient point, which is that there are more ways to contact the city than at any time in our history. And so for those that maybe say this is shutting down democracy or whatnot, I would say, well, there are plenty of other ways that you can reach the city, and we're very, very responsive including through direct message through those same channels. We're just not going to allow a spot on our spaces for those types of conversations. So some of the lessons learned in some of the conversations we had amongst us as staff were that, our staff felt a lot of guilt for exposing the public and staff to such toxic conversations, because this I will expound that the family day was not the only experience we had. We had others with a simple, hey, we're increasing EV charging stations, and that divulged into a climate change debate that got very toxic and heated over many days with lots of people that aren't even from our region. So um, and that, social media is increasingly not a safe or family friendly space. And that's so that we have to really be more careful and mindful of how we use those resources. And that, turning off comments actually takes a bit of extra resources, because Facebook, and you have to actively choose to not have comments. And then if you do any boosting on Meta platforms, uh, they don't allow you to not have comments on a boosted post, and so you have to proactively go in and delete comments. Uh, Even though it is a little bit more resource intensive, I still think we're providing actually better value to residents. So impacts to those channels, I mean, engagement did go down significantly, but if your only engagement is just a rage conversation, then I think it's still worth the decrease. Because in fact, our content, like the impressions we receive, has still continues to increase. So from still providing that information that I need to provide to residents, and we're getting lots of traction on that, then I still feel very strong that we made the right decision in not allowing those toxic conversations if I'm still achieving my goals. And then finally, moving forward, recently we had a council ask us to report back on implications of some of the things happening in the US, if we can decrease our purchases in the US. But a sub part of that was also to maybe see about getting off of X. So we're actually moving forward with we're opening with Threads account and Blue Sky account that we're going to be moving off. I didn't highlight it earlier, but to our X followers, we have 66,000, which is quite large. If you compare to, say, Island Health, who's moving in a similar direction, they have 12,000 on their X. Some of the other municipalities that I've talked to, which are similar size to us, or similar following, around 12,000. So 66,000 is a really large following to just sort of walk away from. So we are going to hopefully just build those other audiences and then slowly transition off, and then still allow for the use of X in cases of emergency. I'm reminded that, LA, Los Angeles, during the recent fires, they still use their X account significantly, even while the owner of the platform was trashing them online. So you still have a duty to find the best tools to inform your residents, and so we'll continue to do that as well. Anyway, so that's our story and how we ended up here, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Michelle, you're muted.
There we
Cheryl, go ahead.
Oh, sorry about that. I was muted. So, and I'm back. Just wait for a second, Cheryl. I just wanted to mention that some people did actually join our session a little bit after 12. And so, Sheldon, can you just reiterate what it was that was the catalyst for us turning off our comments?
Oh, sure. It was essentially racist, vile conversations about. It started with a Family Day post that included a photo of an Indigenous family, and then we had other opportunities as well with a post about an EV charging station divulged into a really nasty conversation about climate change with people from all over North America chiming in. And so you really start to question, like, what's the value of those of facilitating those types of discussions, because it's not really informing your residents about city services.
Great, thanks. Cheryl.
Hi there. We're watching, it's the whole public affairs team here at Victoria Police Department. So we're very curious about this. Hi. Thanks for this. We're really happy to see the information. And of course, we get a ton of negative comments on all of our stuff as well. So it's a really relevant conversation. But actually, Griffin had the question.
Sure. Hey, Griffin.
Yeah, so just bouncing off of what Cheryl said there, I'm wondering if you could touch on your experience thus far with using the alternatives like Red and Blue Sky. Have you found, like, what has the engagement been like on those platforms?
We haven't actually been very active on them yet, but we are going to be reporting back to council in April, sort of saying this is where we're at now with Threads and Blue Sky. You know, Threads, you kind of you get the benefit of joining up with all of your Instagram followers, right? But I also know we're just in the process today of, I think there's like a municipal starter pack for Blue Sky as well. And so I think I'd love to maybe once we have our report back in April, I'll share it with you and sort of see what our experience has been. We're at the very early stages so far. Yeah.
Any other questions? I think, oh, I know these aren't numbered on my screen, so I'm not sure who came first, but I think I might have seen Irene, if I'm saying your name correctly.
You are, thank you. And I have to remember to look at my camera on this monitor, not over here. Thank you very much. For me, this is huge. My name's Irene. I work for the New Channels Tribal Council. That's the 14 First Nations on the west coast of Vancouver Island, the Fisheries Department specifically. I have also encountered over the years a couple terrible moments, namely where, you know, I was sharing job opportunities with the Coast Guard that were Indigenous specific, and it elicited like wrath from Alberta, from you name it. Just people thought it was really unfair. So because I'm a one-woman team, these types of conversations are critical for me because my instincts were guiding me to, I don't post to X anymore, but I wasn't sure, like, do I just leave it there as an archive? Do I leave it there, like you said, in case of emergency? And I also was thinking about exploring Blue Sky. So now I know I'm not like, other people are thinking the same. So that's very validating for me. But what I wondered was, have you heard anything about, are there tools that would allow you to, or is there value in downloading all of your Twitter posts as some sort of an archive? Or like, if one day, let's say we're like, yeah, no, we're totally done with X. Like I think I'm there, but I'm leaving it for now. Is that something you've thought about?
I would say certainly when we started the conversation about turning off comments, we started archiving some of the worst evidence of horrible content so that we could and we did actually get an FOI on that after we turned off comments about what was the evidence, and it was you know, easy to provide. At this time, I don't foresee us completely leaving X because I can't walk away from those 66,000 followers, but we'll just sort of, and also I don't want someone to take our handle, right? Like, we're planning on basically pinning a post there that says, find us other places for, you know, more content, and then having the option to fire it back up if we need, but we just won't be as active on there. Yeah.
Thank you.
Irene, Sheldon touched on that important thing. Somebody could take the handle if you do leave Twitter. So you don't want that to happen. And so, yeah, that is what we're going to do. We will never, well, I shouldn't say never, but currently we will not close our account. When we decide, if and when we decide that we build a new following on Blue Sky or Threads, and that we feel comfortable that we can get our messaging out to as many people on those platforms, we will likely then say we are no longer active and pin that instead of find us over here. It's like we are no longer active and find us over here, but we will not shut down our account because we don't want somebody, especially for the city, to take that and start posting as us.
Thank you. That's really helpful. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Olivia.
Oh, hi. You can hear me okay?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Great presentation. I commend you. It takes courage to share your challenges that occurred from doing something like this that could have obvious negative blowback and media attention, no less. I am just curious to hear more about, you mentioned that you were removing comments from boosted posts. And boosted posts are an important part of the strategy because they can get out there to a wider audience. But what does that user experience look like for that end user, the optics of I've posted something, I've had my post removed. Like, do you draw attention to that you've removed the comment, or you just let it be? Have you had any blowback from doing that?
Want me to take this one, Sheldon?
Yeah, you go first, and I'll maybe follow up if needed.
And Kathy, we also have that text that you could mention. That's with the post.
That's what I'm about to say. Yeah. So that was definitely a thing where like, okay, well, we can, so the way we do all of our posts now, because the platforms do not like you turning off your posts, so they do not make it easy, or turning off comments, so they do not make it easy. So when we put a post out on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter, we immediately have to go and manually turn off those comments. Like within seconds before anybody can comment on them. But then to your point, Olivia, the Facebook posts, we cannot do that. So we have messaging on the bottom of every ad that we do, and it says, in accordance with our social media policy, comments will be removed. To learn more, please visit. And then we have a link to our social media policy. So it's a warning there. So it's not like we're censoring them after the fact. And so that the expectation is along with the post. So they'll read that before anything.
Yeah, good. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to read a question from the chat from Nicole Sendy. I am interested in how the City of Victoria handled trolls, in quotations, commenting prior to turning off comments. Did you ever block individuals who are posting hateful or racist comments with an initial comment, hide the comment, or respond? Apologies for sharing it on the chat, but I'm having issues with my microphone and the headset we tried did not resolve it. So appears to be a computer issue here. Groan. Thank you.
Previously, we just were constantly monitoring and reminding people of our social, like respectful, parts of our social media policy. It was a lot of work. And I think we've just really shifted that. And some people just, they learn how to toe the line, but, and I think after a while we were just like, why does there even need to be a line? We just shouldn't, like I said before, some of our guiding principles were like, we wouldn't allow this conversation in a council meeting. Council would just shut down and take a break if it was people were talking like that. We wouldn't, and we have very strong, respectful, workplace criteria for when we have engagements in the community and whatever. And so certainly does not prevent anyone from providing their opinion in a variety of ways. We get tons of correspondence. I get phone calls, I get emails, and there's opportunity for people to go and talk to council. And especially over this past year, we've been in the community a ton. We've advanced, one of our largest policy shifts in the city's history with our OCP and also the Crystal Pool project. We're in the community a ton. And so we do provide a lot of opportunity for our residents to be heard and to have conversation with us. And I think that's partly why we really have not gotten much pushback at all about, and if you're a social media user, heavy user, you're aware that conversations are not all that awesome sometimes online. So again, just it went a lot smoother than we anticipated. That's for sure.
And
Thanks.
to add to that too, we actually found one of our concerns was that, oh, now folks that are actually looking for actual information and have real questions won't be able to reach us in the same way, and they still do reach out, but just not as much. So we found, like we had suspected, that most people didn't actually have real questions, and they just wanted that platform to air whatever. So it hasn't been, it wasn't the, our responding to real questions hasn't been, we thought, oh, okay, if a lot of people have questions and we're getting a lot of direct messages, then we'll just post another post with this new information if we're getting enough questions about the same thing. And we found that that has gone down significantly as well. Like there's just not that many questions.
Thanks, Kathy. Tatiana.
Hi. I feel like we all want to jump on the topic of switching platforms and moving away from other platforms. So point to CPRS, I think another session in the future on this would actually be really timely and fascinating. Like on making the decision, how do you pitch it to leadership, the pros and cons of the new platforms. Like I just think we're all thinking about it right now, and it's like, why reinvent the wheel if we can support each other on that? But my actual question is, if you have a message pinned on X saying that, you're no longer active on there, is anybody still monitoring the platform? Because you still get tagged and stuff. Or like, do you know what your plan is on that front? Or are you just going to like jump in and out when you need it?
I think we'd probably still monitor.
Just curious.
Yeah, we use Hootsuite, so it would still be a stream on there that we'd be able to see without having to actually go into to Twitter to see the activity.
And the one thing I'm thinking is that still a lot of people for emergencies tend to go to X, right? And so I don't think we want to lose that necessarily, but I'm hoping that we'll use X to kind of tell people to go to Blue Sky. So we'll see how that goes. Did you have another question, Tatiana? Or?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Becky.
Hello, sorry, I don't have video. I'm Becky Hayden. I'm a communications advisor at Cowichan Tribes. And when my question is around before you shut off your commenting, I'm curious how much your citizens were using it to tag each other for if they saw an event or other information. That seems to be really prevalent in our community. And so I'm just curious what that looked like for you before you shut that down.
Well, they still can do that, right? They can still share all of our content with each other, and I think that we have a very good reach on impressions still, and so that's why, the engagement metric going down, I'm not as concerned about as much, as I still know that at least this is a really valuable channel to get information out. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Kind of. I think you can kind of share it by putting it on your own page, but tagging underneath is just slightly different, because then it's more public. It's just kind of the piece. So I was just curious if that was how citizens in Victoria were using it for events, or if it was just had reached the point where basically, I think Kathy kind of mentioned that, it had reached a point of basically almost any post it seemed like you were making was devolving into a bit of a conversation versus like it's so that value wouldn't be there. So that's more what I was curious about, was like how citizens were using it. It sounds like they had stopped using it in a way that was positive and had moved into it basically being they're kind of their personal chat board of complaints. Is that
exactly?
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And and some people don't make the distinction that these are not political channels, right? These are operational and those types of things. And so if they just want to complain about a council decision or something, it's not like that's not the channel to do that. And so I think that's also helpful to distinguish. Yeah.
Great.
Thank you. That's great.
Thank you. I just wanted to look over to the chat. We have a note from Devin Smith. It says, generally, if you hide the post, the OP doesn't exist. Deleted is another story. Devin, did you want to speak to that or add anything more to that?
Hi, guys. Yeah, I had a lot of experience in community management. I spent close to 2 years working for the province in community management during COVID. So we basically moderated all the BC Gov social media channels, and we did lots and lots of hiding, as you might imagine, and lots of blocking of people who just couldn't behave themselves. So this whole discussion is absolutely fascinating to me because now I work for the CRD, so we have, you might imagine, much less volume of commenters on our posts, but there's a fantasy land out there of me when we could have shut off our comments during COVID because it got quite outrageous. Yeah, and the volume was absolutely bonkers. So thanks so much, Sheldon. It was a great presentation and definitely something that I think more and more people are considering because honestly, the mental health effects of having to moderate a lot of those posts
Totally.
are underrated. And there's a reason why I work in a much quieter part of government now because those 2 years was a lot. So yeah. And I find the conversation too, I can't remember who mentioned it, but I would love a discussion about sort of how we're pivoting to those new channels. I know at the CRD here, we're talking about getting rid of exits, going for board decision this month. But like Blue Sky, for example, because we've got so many service areas in the CRD, it doesn't integrate into Hootsuite. So for us, that's a challenge to get multiple users onto one platform and creating content specific to that and posting it from multiple users. So yeah, there's just a lot of questions about what that's going to look like. So I think that would be another great topic for us to delve into during a lunch and learn.
Our digital strategist did reach out to Hootsuite about Blue Sky, and they said they're working on.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Great. Thanks, Devin. Next question would be from Cheryl.
Hi, everyone. We're just wondering about positive comments. So if you've noticed a loss of that, so we actually did turn comments off on some of our posts specifically about traffic alerts regarding Saturday protests because of these same sort of reasons. Because it just got out of hand. But in general, like we noticed that when we do post stuff, we get a lot of really positive comments, and we're wondering if you guys have noticed a decrease in that, or if or an impact for anyone in not getting sort of that positive feedback about the stuff that you're putting out as well.
We didn't get a lot of positive feedback. To be honest,
we're the city, right?
Yeah. There was.
I guess another way of asking is like, did you consider just turning comments off on certain types of posts and still allowing like positive interaction and feedback on other types of posts?
Well, Kathy, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think our analysis was that it just didn't matter what we were posting. You know, it got worse with certain content, yeah, definitely, but other stuff, it was like and that's part of the discussion that we were having, is like some of these horrible things aren't even on topic. Like they're not even about the specific post. And so why are we even allowing this at all? And you know, we still get wonderful emails and we still get nasty ones too. There's just another avenue, and they have to, you know, put a little more thought into those comments than just one little horrible sentence on Facebook.
Yeah. And that's why the Family Day example was so good. It's like, you know, that would have been one where we would have never thought to turn off comments if we were selecting which, you know, posts to turn off and on. And that's the one that was the worst of all. So that kind of destroyed that line of thinking right away.
Before I go on to the next question, I just put something in the chat myself, is that people began to attack the positive comments. So that's when it was becoming, certainly up to that, you know, moment of Family Day, was that if you were someone out there who did want to share a positive comment, somebody else out there would just kind of beat you down, that you were actually saying something favorable about the city. So there's my little bit on that. So Andy.
Hey, Andy.
Hey, buddy. How are you?
Good.
Good. Not going to ask any of the loaded questions I had planned for you to throw you off your game, but I've been thinking a lot about this space, and maybe I'm one of the very few fortunate people here that we don't have a digital or sorry, we don't have a social media presence by design in public health right now, given the vitriol and hate that Dr. Henry's been facing since the start of the pandemic. But one of the things I'm curious about is, as this like further polarization and the nastiness of some of the comments ramps up, and particularly I think somebody else, just maybe it was Kathy, that made the comment, like with everything else going on in our world, maybe it's just going to continue to get worse. But did it ever get to the point where you considered legal action on any of this stuff? And, you know, if not, I'm curious what other people have experienced in that space in terms of defamation or libel, as I'm kind of navigating some of this right now and trying to consider when and how we make this approach, like when we start this approach, and if not, you know, what you might consider in the future for going down that road. And if anyone's ever dealt with Threads or Twitter in particular in this space of defamation and libel, I'd love to connect with you offline. But yeah, just curious if it ever got to that point with the city.
I don't, not in that aspect, no, but we have certainly, when it gets to a specific person, staff person, we have reached out to Vic PD in the past for their assistance, for sure. Yeah. But it has to be usually direct. We haven't had anyone call out anyone specific, I don't think, on maybe not. But when it becomes to the individual, when it's not just the organization, when it comes to the individual, then we definitely reach out to Vic PD, and they've always been very helpful.
Yeah, and I would echo that. I know Vic PD and Cheryl and your team, they've been very helpful to Dr. Henry during this time, and I'm sure there have been other elected officials and leaders in this space that have suffered through some of this, you know, hatred that we see. But we're even starting to see like the point where dis and misinformation is creating just false narratives, and it can be defamatory to an individual's reputation. So yeah, if anyone has any of that, I'll throw my email in the chat. Would love to hear from you directly. But again, a fantastic presentation and tons to think about here. So thank you.
Thanks, Andy.
Thanks, Andy. I was just going to take a look at the chat, and I just wanted to read out a couple of comments, not so much questions. From Irene, I think given the escalating political climate with the trade wars, anxiety will continue to rise and negative commentary will appear in so many non-political spaces. From Tatiana, we've noticed that we are losing followers on X because folks are leaving the platform. And from Ali, and how many of these comments are bots driving the negative conversations? Interesting.
Great.
And Andy has, thank you, Andy, for putting your email in there and in the chat. So if you want to reach out to Andy, his email address is there. Does anyone have any other questions or comments to share?
I don't know where the raise hand button is when I'm hosting and recording. So I just wanted to ask quickly, as we're all talking about X or Twitter, and that you still have 66,000 followers, but you shared a bit of some of your engagement levels, but I just wonder too, like people are abandoning, as Tatiana mentioned, abandoning the platform, but not all of them are closing their accounts. So I wonder if we have seen any sort of, and I mean anyone as well, have any thoughts on that, on the actual, engagement levels on the platform, or are we just holding on to it because of habit?
I've just flagging off the top, I did put my email in the chat as well. Just if anyone has any follow-ups after, I'm more than happy to. I know for ourselves, we actually had a Threads account and a Blue Sky account for a while. We just hadn't actioned them yet, but we didn't want someone else to steal them, and so it sort of became serendipitous that council asked us to start exploring these options. Oddly enough, I think we still have plenty of followers. Like nobody's really leaving, at least our X channel. You can correct me if I'm wrong, Kathy, but I think we still, that's what makes it so hard. As I said to council during the meeting, we're a victim of our own success here a little bit. It's not just we can just turn it off and leave. It is a valuable tool for us. Kathy, any?
Yeah, you're right. Engagement is going down, but our followers on Twitter, whether or not they're real followers or bots, the numbers show that we have more followers there than all the other ones combined. Still.
Thank you.
Tatiana.
I was just curious to hear from all of you. I know that obviously social is still impactful and all that stuff. There's reasons to be there, but wondering if sometimes we're asking ourselves, well, is it still worth the effort, right? And like, at what point do you make that decision? But also whether anyone on this group is starting to like maybe bring back some of the more old school tools that we have abandoned. I know you want to obviously have a lot of different tools, different audiences, different purposes, but if there's, you know, things that you are bringing back that you stopped using a long time ago to see whether it's novel again, whether it's going to work. So just curious about anyone's done any testing or tried any of that stuff.
I'll say yes, in that we've never been in the community more talking to people. It's just you find even when people are, at least I find, even when they're really upset about something, just a face-to-face conversation is so much easier to regulate and to provide context. You know, we really got into online surveys for a while, and I'm not saying that they're not useful, because they are, but if you're really upset and all your only your only escape is a survey, that's probably just going to make you more mad, because now we're limiting what you're providing feedback on. And so I've thoroughly enjoyed being out in the community more, having more conversations, like for example, the official community plan that I mentioned before. You know, we have a big challenges as a city for providing housing, and so that means change. And change means people are going to be upset about it. And so the only way we're going to have a meaningful discussion, and I think, is face to face. Whereas if we just had a Facebook conversation about it on a feed that we're going to change everything in the city, that would be awful, I think.
Yeah. And people's trust for online information is really going down, which I think is
as
good.
It should be.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, when you try to send messages and they're like, is this just a bot? And you're like, oh my God, if you knew how much work went into this one post, you would know I wasn't a bot.
One thing I think we could speak to, Sheldon and Kathy, is that, you know, we have about 13 email newsletters, and the power of email newsletter to get our information out. So social isn't the end all to communicate. We have, I think we have up to 13 email newsletters. A couple may not be as frequent now, for OCP is one of them, but it is one way that we have subscribers who want to hear from us.
That's right. Yeah, and our reach is really great. Like, and Kathy will probably correct me, but I believe, you know, a typical government on all levels, government digital newsletter has about a 20% open rate, whereas ours average around 70. And so we're providing content that people want and find useful. Our number one being our recreation for all, so it's all of our recreation programs, and that's something that we want people to open and sign up for stuff, right? And so we've seen a significant increase in rec registrations. That's not just the digital newsletter, but all the other, because here's the other thing that we are looking at. And so not just going back to, being in the community and talking to people, but we're exploring different spaces like Spotify ads and podcast ads and movie theater ads, things that we hadn't really been doing before, but just finding different channels to get the information out that residents need.
Irene has a question.
Thank you. It's actually more a response to Tatiana's sort of opening of, is anybody considering just bailing altogether, or just what channels are we using? And so I have a little bit to say about this. So when Facebook sort of moved to a pay to play, if you will, it's not for profit where I work. We are so strictly funded by DFO, Fisheries and Oceans Canada. And so I almost never even boost posts. So already my reach, I've watched it over the last 7 years. It's just gunk. It's gone down. And now it's important for new channel communities. It's the tool that people use for chat. And so, but that said, it's sort of like the elders who are using Facebook. And so the truth is that, because in my case, I'm a one-woman show, I'm not finding the youth there anyway, but I don't have what it takes to get on TikTok and also start that. And so you're also, I think, starting to see a generational gap there. And so I am putting more effort into my newsletter. I modernize the look, and like you said, Sheldon, and where I put money in was in a better MailChimp account where I can get a nicer, it creates, brand colors for me and more analytics. And my last newsletter, 65% of the people opened it. And for me, that's huge. I don't have a huge audience. There's like 300 people who get this, but the people who are invested in West Coast, Vancouver Island fisheries issues, they're actually reading it, and so, and then it's the face-to-face community piece is huge in Indigenous communities, at least in the ones I work for. And so our community outreach is a place that we continue to put effort, and whether that's at our all chiefs meetings or my capacity building coordinator and I going out speaking to communities, I find that even though we post these incredible opportunities like, hey, join a deep sea research expedition opportunity, you get all these comments, and the truth is people tag people like the lady from Cowichan Tribe said, oh dude, you should do this at so and so, and then it's the people we end up calling one-on-one who we have on our little list that we know have similar skill set. Hey, this opportunity is coming up. Those are the ones that pan out. So a lot of the time that tagging activity, like, it looks like a frenzy and a flurry, but it's not always who comes through. And I have also found that some of the most meaningful questions come through our info at, like, just our website email. Like, people either email us directly through our staff directory on our website, which I have email addresses for everyone, or just coming through our general intake form. And so I just find anyone who actually really wants to engage and ask a meaningful question takes the time to type out an email. So that's been my experience. And yes, Tatiana, and you and I have had a few casual conversations and on LinkedIn, and I've noticed I'm posting less because I'm just not seeing the interaction as much anymore. And so I am in this strange zone now of not knowing what to do, and hence these conversations are incredibly useful. So yeah.
And I still love LinkedIn.
Yeah.
It's like my favorite one.
Yeah.
LinkedIn
people get nicer when their profession is on display.
That's right.
Back to something we said earlier about, like, going back to maybe more traditional things. We've actually gone to a lot of mailers as well, which I think more than ever before. So much so that we were exhausting our printer a little bit, in-house printer. But like we found that we did a couple of mailers for like our pool engagement stuff, and people would show up, with the mailer in their hand and ready to ask a few questions. And we do one of our probably most common and popular mailers is, and I always say, we need to be visually compelling enough that they'll at least look at it while they're recycling it, because we need to let them know that we're going to shut their street down, and why it's important, so that they don't email us and call us with angry questions. And I just was chatting with engineering the other day, and I'm like, we did a bunch of mailers, we did a bunch of postcards, and we did some info sessions, not engagement per se, but we're like, we're going to be, and on those cards, we're going to be here during this time and able to answer all your questions about this project at this time. I said, can you tell me, like, is that having the impact it needs to have? And they were like, absolutely. Like, we get far less phone calls, far less angry residents, because it's like, well, I get that as the city, there's work that needs to get done. You have to replace the pipes, you have to do these works, but this is also where people live. And so let's just let them know that, hey, there's an impact coming. And if you have questions, here's where you can get them answered.
Great. We have Becky.
Just a question about what you just said regarding using mailers. I'm just curious how you measure the effectiveness of the mailers that you choose to do.
That's a great question. I think right now we're using anecdotal evidence that people are showing up with the mailer, and talking to our client groups across our client departments across the city, and saying like, so like that whole comms plan, how did that impact your work? Did you get lots of blowback? How did that, did you feel like people were informed? But interesting question though, because that's another reason why we have a really hard time just exiting all of social media, because of the metrics and the data that you can mine, right? Like Spotify ads, we can mine that data to say like, oh, we know exactly how many people saw this ad and took action. Whereas you put a ad in the paper you paid $4,000 for, and you're like, I don't know, did they even see it? I have no idea.
I think too, the importance, like from a visual standpoint, in connecting different ways we communicate out about a project in different ways, is that for awareness, they may see that mailer while they're recycling it, as Sheldon said, but then they also may see it in the newspaper, and then they also might see it on social, and they also might see it on the Save on Foods arena screen. So it's just sort of the like the recognition for the messaging across, whether or not it's like truly absorbed in one piece. I feel like that's also our responsibility, is to just promote just make folks aware of the campaigns on every level we can.
That's a great point, Kathy, and that we, especially these last couple of projects that I mentioned earlier, we went like full like market saturation on every channel we could possibly think of, so that we could, at the end of the day, we can maybe pat ourselves on the back and be like, we did our, like, if people didn't know about this, they were living under a rock or didn't care.
Yeah.
I really do feel, when I was afraid of the mail strike, but I did work on the Crystal Pool referendum and the whole mail out. And it was like, what am I going to do with 66,000 postcards if they don't get mailed? And how do you call it vote by mail if there's no mail? But thankfully, the post office workers did go back to work in time. And on December 20th, we were able to mail out our mailer. So yeah, I definitely was going to just kind of back up, Kathy. What you were saying is that, when I'm developing a comms plan, that postcard mail out is just really reinforcing all the other different comms tools that we're using. And generally social is only one of them. So yeah. So I'm just cognizant of, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, we're in much the same boat. And going back to what Irene was saying, and kind of what you were talking about with the face-to-face, working in an Indigenous community, face-to-face is the this gold standard. And then we reinforce using social media, but we did have an instance where one of our quote unquote trolls, who, basically every comment that she made was going to be negative. We were well aware of that. And we did an RCMP event, and she came. And by the end, she let me take her photo with an RCMP officer. And since then, her engagement with us, we've had no issues with her online. So again, I think that really does speak to how much in personal face-to-face engagement really is becoming much more effective than, you know, shouting into the void on social media.
But it's not easy, right? It's not easy or cheap. Like it's a lot of work to make sure that you're prepared enough, you've provided the right venue, you've thought about all these things, and then the staff time. Like we spent a lot of money on overtime last year, but doing our due diligence to make sure that, and we try really hard to, one of our things we do is go to where the people are instead of always expecting them to come to us. And so, yeah, we'd had, you know, an odd session at say City Hall, but even with this pool, we made sure we had an information kiosk at a couple of malls as well as in the lobby of the pool. And then we would go to farmers markets, or we would go to different hockey games, like go to where people are already. You know, I'm very empathetic to what, you know, the average person has to deal with on a day-to-day basis as far as just running their life. But then all of the information that every corporation is trying to get into their head, you know, and so that's why we try to be as innovative and be everywhere as much as we can, because I know that we're not the only ones certainly just trying to get people's attention.
Does anyone have any other questions or comments? Okay. Well, thank you. On behalf of CPRS VI, I would like to thank Sheldon and Kathy for joining us today. And special thanks to Ellie for providing me with support for technical support with Zoom. I always appreciate any technical support. And thanks, of course, to all of you for making time in your day to join us, because the sun is shining and it feels like spring out there. So I do appreciate you taking this time to join us online for this very insightful conversation, Lunch and Learn. And if you do have any ideas for subsequent, social media type or any other type of Lunch and Learn, please, reach out to us on the board. Quick things for you to know. Our next members meetup is planned for April. More information coming soon. There's the annual CPRS National General Conference, Elevate 2025, Building Trust in a Shifting World, May 25th to 27th in Banff, and early bird registration is open till April 1st. And lastly, I am excited to announce that we have a guest speaker confirmed for AGM. Amy Bronne, Director of Community Relations at BC Ferries. She's going to be a guest speaker, and it's Thursday, June 5th at downtown at Quench. So there'll be more information coming out soon about that. So mark your calendars and plan to join us. And Ellie, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Just really quick, I just wanted to thank, you're going to officially thank our speakers, but everyone in the room. This has been so valuable, this sort of back and forth and connection here. And I've just loved it. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. And yeah, so thanks again, everyone, and have a great day.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.